Shack. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling and flare. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's Ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio, once again with your host, Nick Burnaby, here on UCY.TV. I'm joined by my co-host, DB Schwartz. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, Nick. I'm just getting ready to talk about what's going on with Russia, and then looks like the beginnings of the propaganda battle have begun.
Yeah, I mean it's going crazy. I saw a lot of stuff in the news today where now there's a lot of these neocons are trying to pin this missing plane phenomenon on the Iranians. Let's face it, this missing plane thing is one of two things. It's either a giant distraction or it's some kind of PR false flag they're going to use to ease us into accepting, that this plane was hijacked by Iranian terrorists or something stupid like that.
So the backstory, which I've been reading more and more about it because I find it to be fascinating theater, is that it really has this massive connotation for the next and last Great World War, because Freescale Semiconductor was developing a invisibility coating. In other words, something that could be placed on military hardware and make it bend light around it so it'd be radar and invisible to the naked eye, which obviously would be a huge advantage to any military. So one owner of that company who owned 20% apparently was one of the Rothschilds, and the other 4 were Chinese nationals. And now that those Chinese nationals are out of the way, 100% of Freescale Semiconductor is now owned by the Rothschilds.
I mean, I wouldn't put anything out.
So in other words, a flight from Malaysia with 4 guys that knew how to make military hardware invisible was going to land in Beijing and never did. Connect the dots.
Now, if that's the undercurrent story, I mean, what is it that they're going to feed us in the media?
Well, that wasn't fed to anything. That was only through people doing research and finding out about this patent and about how 80% of the patent was owned by these 4 Chinese nationals, and now these guys are gone, and it reverts the entire 100% of the patent over to, this Blackstone Holdings, which is a Rothschild subsidiary. So this is more than saber rattling. This is economic. I guess what you can call it is like back in the day when you'd send in guys that would scout around. I guess you would call them, I don't know what
economic hitmen.
There you go. It's gone on to a point where now it's on a much larger scale. It's a warfare scale now because they just prevented tech from getting into the enemy hands.
And, we also saw some of the NSA leaks from Snowden that talked about how the NSA was getting, they were undercutting all of the, they were taking all the ideas from all these companies and taking them into the NSA. They were intercepting engineering plans from Siemens, which is a German-based engineering firm, big tech firm. So, not only is the NSA spying for the government, but it seems like they're also spying for the special interests, obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the entire thing they do. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's two different branches. You have to remember there's the CIA and the NSA, and they do completely different things, and they have completely different bosses, even though they supposedly both work for us. We now know that's not the truth at all. We have one side which works for a banking cartel cabal, and another one that works for a military-industrial complex. Now, are they in cohesion? No. Or in cahoots? No. But are they competing? Well, I guess so, but only towards the same goal, which is Western domination of the whole world.
Western and it's just turned into this huge banking monopoly, this huge banking scheme, and we saw that
already. And
we saw that sweep right into Ukraine when they swept this new central banker right into power. And we can't forget about all this stuff going on with these banksters committing suicide. There was just another one that came out today or yesterday.
Right.
And then we have all these other issues with the underlying economic problems that the world is facing, and now this economic bullying, to say the least. And this all flies all around, and at the same time, we got Russia going into taking over Crimea, and then I just saw an article that apparently Russia is also saying, hey, there's people in Estonia that are Russian speaking that are being oppressed as well, and we may think about liberating them. It's like they're using the same script that we use. They're like, we're gonna go save people, so let us bomb and roll tanks over the border,
Right.
And it's just like, it's the same exact excuse that we use when we were going into Iraq, when we were going into Libya, when we backed up the what became the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. It's always under this guise of saying, hey, we're going in for democracy. Oh, there's people being oppressed, the rights of the minority, this, that, and the other thing. And it's always the same thing. It's just a bunch of big, military moves, a bunch of resources getting wasted, and a bunch of guys getting rich. And unfortunately, a bunch of guys, just like that Ukrainian soldier that was supposedly shot today, getting hurt or killed.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's the poor people that always get hurt or killed, and then it's the very rich that just get richer off of these conflicts.
Naturally. I mean, that's the nature and the basic nature of warfare, is that it's the poor armed killing the non-poor armed until they're no longer needed, and then the elites basically wiping out those armed poor. Through every kind of way you can imagine. Now, how has that worked on a global scale? The U.S. has always, historically been, we're the armed poor. We've been allowed to propagate these arms and been allowed to load up because it makes our country invasion proof, while our own, basically inept and criminal government continues to do things around the world we don't want to do, but we really know we can't really out or overthrow them. So we're in this quagmire now, man. We're starting to see a government that even if we told them to stop, they wouldn't, because we couldn't stop them, really. We really just couldn't without there being some kind of mass chaos.
I remember, this takes me back to what I heard Malala Joya say, which is that activist from Afghanistan, she survived, I think she's up to over 5 assassination attempts now anyway. She said there's 2 world superpowers. There's the U.S. government, and then there's public opinion.
Yep.
And the fact is that, like you were saying, we are an invasion-proof country, just simply not even because of the military. I mean, simply because we have over 300 million registered firearms in this country, which means there's probably double or triple that number that aren't registered.
Right.
And if anyone were dumb enough to try to invade this country, believe me, people would rally around this idea and they would all fight them back. I mean, I hate to say it, but look at 9/11 when they had everyone so duped into this thing that the next week they were all flying these American flags and stuff, and everyone had all this nationalism and all this stuff. But in a real threat, in a real emergency, if someone really tried to invade this country, unfortunately they'd have about 100 million people with rifles at their throats fighting them house to house. That's just not going to happen. There's no way in hell that happens, and if anyone tried to do it, it'd be a disaster for them.
The only country that would feasibly be able to do any large-scale damage to us is Russia and China, and they would never use conventional warfare. It'd be only biological. They would never mess with nukes either. So that's what we have to look forward to if we keep scratching the bear and making it wake up and want to fight us over the Ukraine, which honestly, you have to look at the Ukraine like we look at Canada. I mean, the cultural differences are nil, especially in that area of the Ukraine. I mean, they are Russian. And they want to, basically be absorbed back in. Estonia is funny that you mentioned that because forever Belarus has been this last final dictatorship in Europe. I can't think of the guy's name. I can look that up though, but you could be sure that that'll eventually be targeted by Moscow as well because they actually have an enclave just to the west of Lithuania, of all places, Kaliningrad. And a lot of people know Kaliningrad. It's very, very famous. Germany had a really hard time there. The Nazis did, and they're not going to give that port up. So,
it's like a separate little autonomous Russian area, right?
Yeah, it's an enclave. I mean, if you fight them, Moscow will come with all their troops. So you have Belarus, you have Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and the Ukraine, which basically, for all intents and purposes, is the old USSR and still is completely in their sphere.
Yeah, and historically, if you look back at the Russian sphere of influence, that's always been under the Russian sphere of influence. Those are all Slavic peoples. They all share similar culture, similar religion, things like that. Of course, there is leftover remnants from the Mongolian Empire where you'll have pockets of Islam, pockets of Muslim, pockets of Arab people down there as well, and that's where you end up with the conflict. And then you have the people that are like the Western Ukrainians that affiliate more with the Europeans rather than the Russians. But in the end, it's like we're just drawing these lines in the sand, and it's like there was a video that went viral a couple of days ago about all the lines that have been redrawn in Europe in the past like 50, 100 years or whatever. And the borders have just changed so much, and it's just every country gets shifted, and the lines are redrawn, and then over and over and over again, we end up fighting over these fake lines in the sand, in the dirt.
Well, they're only fake until people realize that the tribe mentality doesn't need to exist anymore, because we really are truly and really are post-scarcity. It's just that technology needs to be unfurled across the globe. Will it be? No. The elites will never give it away. It'll just be filtered down as useful. So what does that mean? Well, the internet is really our only bastion of hope because of the information that leaks out there. So we've got to just continue to plug along and let all these new technologies that let people free themselves from this horrible slave paradigm continue to evolve.
Well, we know what's wrong. We know that every country has basically the same problem we have. They got a bunch of bureaucrats that don't really have their interests at heart, that are telling them what to do and telling them how to live their lives and dictating their economy, and that's a huge problem. And that's why there's so many people that are poor. And then the other problem is that you got governments dictating sexualism. So you got places like Russia that are intolerant to gay people. And even this country, in some states, they're still intolerant to gay people, even though we'd like to think we were past that point. Being in California, obviously the people here have kind of figured out that, okay, we shouldn't be discriminating against people because of their sexual orientation or their sexual classification or whatever it is that they call themselves. I don't know how to say it, but unfortunately, it's like we all have the same problem. And it's this huge bureaucratic issue, and it's other people telling other people how they should live their lives and what they should do and how they should work, where they should live, what kind of religion, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think we can do to just start individually, person to person, you and me and our friends and our families and anyone listening to this show and their friends and their families? What can we feasibly start to do to try to fracture away at this power structure and undermine it and then start replacing it?
I think we touch on this all the time, and I think this concrete idea is starting to formulate over the last 6 or 8 months, which is this financial debacle. This house of cards still exists, and we need to take advantage of that, especially those of us who have good credit before it falls down. And we need to encourage through free enterprise and through real capitalism, not crony, that there is a need for people to have farms and self-sufficiency installed at their own places because they are too busy working to do it and cannot do it. Do not have the expertise to do it, don't have the equipment to do it, the wherewithal or the knowledge, and that if something like this pops up in one city and it takes off and there's people that basically start to unplug from the supermarket so much, and then they eventually start to unplug from the grid itself so much, and less money is filtered into these gigantic companies, which are just basically government. That's all they are. Then we pull away at their power. They can't buy things. If they're going to play into the same game we are, and they have this finite amount of money, even though they can print it, I mean, they're going to really feel the sting. And that's how it's going to change the world slowly but surely. People are going to go, I'm not going to go to the supermarket anymore because everything I eat makes me sick. And I'm not going to any longer participate in getting energy from the grid because I know it's polluting the world right now and destroying it for future generations.
Yeah, man, I think that we should take a shift towards more like autonomous thinking, where we have different people, trying out different ideas. Let's say in San Diego we were trying an idea, in LA they were trying another, in New York they were trying another, and in rural areas they were trying another idea. But instead of competing against each other and trying to beat each other, we need to be sharing ideas and find out, okay, this works, this doesn't work, we had success with this, we didn't have success with that. It's about open source and sharing of ideas, not trying to monopolize on them like Apple and all these people are doing now, where they try to put out these ideas and then they want to just completely shut anyone out that wants to go in there and change it up. And that's why you see Apple always in the news fighting these patents in the courts and all this stuff with Samsung, etc. But that's not the future. That's the old way of doing things. That's the greedy way of doing things. And everyone's like, oh, Apple's a green company. Oh, really? They basically employ slave labor in China.
Well, the thing is this: it's until higher education is free, then this whole economic system is a farce. Because it's not really free at all. And there's no actual upward mobility really at all. Now, a few people will fall through the cracks and somehow succeed despite the system, but they're few and far in between. And this whole argument about there not being enough resources on Earth, there being too many people, there's 60 trillion in debt in the world to central banks, which are just other people that create money out of thin air. You have systems like that going on where people still believe in it. And is it any wonder why we're at where we're at, when we really need to be working towards the monetary system losing its value? Thus, all of this information will be spilled out anyway because it has no more real value. When people stop working and just start creating and producing for each other, for a whole collective, well, the elites will automatically lose their power.
Exactly. I mean, and it's just a matter of the situation getting more
Hey everybody, looks like we're back. I'm not sure if Nick is having some technical issues, probably as usual. He got NSA'd like we always like to say, because his laptop is just completely inundated with all kinds of stuff, so who knows. Okay, so while we're waiting for Nick to come back, we can do a little rundown on some of the things we were gonna talk about. Basically, one of the things that a lot of people don't really understand while they're watching kind of all this media circus going on is that China is really kind of, sitting on the cusp of, I guess, an economic meltdown of their own. Nick, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, I don't know what happened there, but it looked like both of us had some technical difficulties there for a second.
I think we all know what's going on. We need to wipe these hard drives or something. Yeah, but at any rate, what we were going to get into was, concurrently as all this other stuff's going on, China's about to implode, and I don't know if anybody has any idea what 1.3 billion people in a depression would look like.
I don't think we'd want to know what that looked like.
Yeah.
Because if they've got the same kind of thinking that we've got in our bureaucratic management system, then when shit hits the fan in China, guess what they're gonna say? Hey guys, time to start up a new war. Let's put you guys to work.
I mean, and everybody around there will be fair game. This is where we can understand now what the saber rattling is looking to be. China's gonna square off with Japan or whatever. Maybe we'll fight them and Russia at the same time, and we're gonna have all our allies that really don't amount to much, but at least they'll do their best to help us. And this is how it'll keep this completely fake house of card economy going. It has to be war or else it will implode on itself.
Well, here's one thing that I hadn't really thought of earlier, and this is something we talk about a lot, is the mechanization and the shift towards computers and robotics for the labor force here in the U.S., which is a huge problem here. Maybe not such a problem, but something that must be addressed before it becomes a total centralized wage, energy slave where everything is owned by a few people and all the machines are owned by a few people and everyone's left to be on food stamps. Right. Now think about China. They are just a giant manufacturing economy at this point. And if when they start putting this robotic stuff and it starts taking leaps and bounds, like we're starting to see in some of this latest technology that's coming out, then China, their economy is gone. Just let's face it, their economy is gone. And if we ever decided that
because our economy is gone, that's the whole thing. Is where were they shipping everything? They were either shipping it to here, Europe, or Australia. Everybody's hurting except Australia, but they only have 20 million people. They can't possibly buy enough garbage and give them back iron ore and coal. So it's done. It's imploded. It's beyond fixing it. It's completely trashed. You can't have 1.3 billion people, let alone with us with 300 million having massive issues right now. Can you imagine another billion people? And they have had how many civil wars? 5, 6, 7. Every time a dynasty falls, there's another massive civil war. And we can easily see that and see Japan get the brunt of it because they hate them after the fall of Manchuria and everything like that from World War II. So, yeah, man, we can see what's going on. Russia and the U.S. will have proxy wars. They're not going to touch each other's prime lands. These guys are almost like boss and buddies. The Cold War was real good to these guys. They just want to do a little nibble to get people scared so they'll back the MICs of both of the countries.
Where do you think Putin made his money? He made his money in the Cold War.
Jeez.
You know what I'm saying?
$70 billion means he makes, I don't know, I think somebody said he makes a couple $1 million a day in interest. Something around there.
If you're the former, let's just say let's just say for instance, in the US we had the former head of the NSA as our basically permanent president.
So if J. Edgar Hoover was still alive and was the president for the last 80 years, no, I'm just kidding.
Basically, talk about some blackmail and make if you're the head of the NSA, you got dirt on everybody. Right. If you're the head of the KGB like Putin was, you got dirt on everyone. So if you want to be president, guess what? You pull the right strings, you're going to be president no matter what. As long as you got the media on your side.
Yep, and he's part of the global club too. A lot of people may or may not believe that. He's not a Bilderberger because he doesn't need to be. He's his own sphere. He controls his own complete corner of the world, and it's untouched. It contains most of the what they call virgin resources left in the world in Siberia, which is what the elites are going to need to power what they think is going to be left of the world after they're done cleansing it or whatever, flambeing it, as they like to say.
The thing that's really frightening about Putin is that not only is he a figurehead, but he's also a puppeteer. You know, and that's where he's different than Obama. Obama is just a figurehead. He's not a puppeteer.
Right.
Obama is not a part of the 1%er club. Obama is just a useful dude that's going to take all the heat for all these guys to pull off their schemes, and then in 4 years they're going to blame it on Obama and then elect a Republican. Let's let's just be honest with ourselves. You know, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
And we're going to see the new president is going to be someone like either one of the Bush brothers, or one of the Bush sons, or whatever, or you're going to see Marco Rubio or one of these jokers.
It's going to be Ted Cruz for the Libertarian Party after the economy implodes and everyone turns their back on both sides and goes to a completely co-opted new single party system, and that's what they want, man. It's going to go into, we're going to bring back the rights, but guess what? The rights aren't going to matter when the drones are up in the air. They can tell you everything, and then all they have to do is just push a button.
Yeah.
That's where it's going, man. You can see it. It's a watershed tactic. It's something under the surface they're going to have waiting, and it's another card they're going to pull to appease the masses. And that's if there's anything left if they get this war going, you know?
Yeah, and that's where we got to stop. That's where we got to stop it, man.
It's another Syria moment, but it's much, much, much worse.
We can't just keep letting these guys do these things, because it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to stop the U.S. from sending drones into Ukraine. But where were we when they were installing this puppeteer government, this central banking government? It's just, yeah, there's a few of us trying to say it, but there's not enough people standing up against the covert actions that our government is taking. Yeah, we stopped the invasion of Syria. We stopped the full-out bombing of Syria. But we didn't stop them from funding the rebels, did we? You know, and you know. But
they haven't succeeded, and in that way, we did do do the best we could. We didn't allow a chess piece to be moved on the board, so we averted a checkmate, maybe possibly with Israel catching a dirty bomb or something like that. You know, you never know. So just even stalling this stuff is good, because there's a lot of people now that had been staunch supporters of everything with our government and believed that our government and America were synonymous and that you had to support one to support the other. And now with many key celebs, and not only celebs, but just people I know in my own life, they're starting to say, you know what, I love my country and I hate what's going on inside of our government, and I don't want to I can't stand it. But what do we do? That's the biggest question. The only thing we can do really is just to try to peel away layer after layer of their power. And that starts with everybody just being completely vulnerable to the whims of this giant mega manufacturing of everything we need: food, water, electricity, clothing, and shelter.
And, you know, like I was saying earlier about, you know, what if the monetary system went down? And even if it doesn't, it's not going to hurt you to be a bit off the mainstream monetary grid.
Well, it's going to make a food riot.
And in the same way, you know, to start getting off the food grid, to start getting off this mainstream GMO food and all this stuff, it's obviously not going to hurt you. I mean, and it's healthier for you, first off. And second off, it gets you better prepared for if something does happen, if there is an emergency, whether it be economic, whether it's this war, or whether it's a natural disaster, a drought, a flood, everything freezes, whatever it is. And, you know, we see these huge contaminations of the food supply. You know how they'll recall chicken, or they'll recall beef like they just did, or they'll recall strawberries or whatever. That's a big problem, because what's happening is that they have these centralized distribution systems. So you could even have organic meat coming through this distribution system and it'll get contaminated.
Well, that's what happened, Nick. Is what's going on now with that whole beef recall is that they're going to fine. Okay, check this out. This beef, for 90% of it's been consumed already, okay? and it's from diseased animals, meaning they have cancer because they're eating GMO, okay? They're not going to link that. They're not going to tell anyone that. They're eating GMO and they're getting fat tumors. And people are eating these animals, okay? And what they're doing is this is the USDA's way of snuffing out organic once and for all, because what's going to happen now is every farm that used that processing plant, and there's a lot of organic farms that use that processing plant, they're all going to be fined. And guess what's going to happen to those small family farms when they get these huge USDA fines? They're gone.
They're gone, or they're going to have to sell out to Big Brother.
Big Agro will afford a $5 million fine with no problem at all. But that will wipe out a family farm that's been there for 200 years. So you see what it's doing. You see what's going on. This is Agenda 21. This is the UN squeezing out everything and making it all Big Agro, because once that happens, they can start to poison wholesale, and you'll see cancer rates just, man, you think they're bad now. Just watch.
Oh yeah, and when these real power-hungry bureaucrats, if you're able to centralize the food supply that closely, what's going to stop them from just taking it over one day and just say, oh, they're not doing a good enough job? Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basically already done. Everyone that's working at Monsanto used to work within the government. A lot of these people working within the FDA used to work for Monsanto. Yeah, it's already done.
Right. I mean,
now it's on us.
This is where it's at. If you're not going to a farmer market and you're not buying farm produce or meats or cheeses or whatever right from farms, it's Big Agro 99% of the time. It's GMO 99% of the time, and you can be assured that it's all throughout Cisco's restaurant chains and even the high end stuff. Even places like where me and you live at Donovan's, I don't know if they have non-GMO corn-fed beef. They advertise corn-fed beef like fine Midwestern aged corn. I don't want corn-fed beef. I want grass-fed beef, non-GMO. Corn-fed beef to me means GMO.
Exactly. I mean, all the corn, 90% of the corn in this country is GMO.
And unless it's saying organic corn, I mean, and then in that case, you'd never do that because it's too expensive. So if a cow's not grass-fed, it is GMO.
And see, I look at these companies like, for instance, Whole Foods. I mean, it's a positive step in the right direction, arguably. There's people that are criticize Whole Foods for their business practices, etc. But I don't really think I don't think Whole Foods is the answer to our issue. It's about individuals coming together, planting food in their own damn yards, and then forming food co-ops within their own neighborhoods and their own communities to, start battling back and start fighting back from the grassroots up. I mean, I've been eating almost a tomato a day out of my aquaponic system, and I got 2 big Brussels sprouts plants that are about to get harvested. I mean,
and they grow like wildfire, don't they? Those Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, man, they grow really fast.
Because people don't understand that when they go to a supermarket, when they're paying what they think is a good deal, it's nothing. The seed, the water, and all the fertilizer in the world will cost you pennies on that dollar you spend. So growing at home will save hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of dollars, and maybe even hundreds of thousands over the course of your life, because when you eat organic, you avoid a slew of diseases.
Now, this is the thing, growing your own food is basically solar. It's basically solar energy. Because when you grow your own food, the single biggest input that goes into gardening and into growing food is the solar, the sun, the sunshine that comes in. The plant the plant uses that, turns that into food. Right. So, the biggest cost is free. The biggest cost is the sunlight, and you get that for free. So,
and it's the initial investment. If you want to have a farm, like we were talking with Michael on Monday, he was saying $2,000 is a micro farm. Like, we can get this template and this blueprint going, and people that are, have a home and they're making a mortgage payment and their food bill's $500 or $1,000 a month, and they see a micro farm available for $2,000 that's going to produce, a couple $100 of produce a month, that pays itself off in a year. It's not too hard to see how if everybody had a micro farm and there was a hiccup in our distribution system or our economy or anything else, people could make it for 1, 2, 3 weeks,
Exactly. And you know what Michael was talking about with $2,000, he was also talking about getting your basic electricity off grid as well.
Right.
And that's all included. So, I mean, make sure you guys go back, check the archives on the ucy.tv/TAMR page. Go to Monday's show and go back and listen to, at about half an hour through the show, Michael Rodriguez comes on from Occupy Tesla and really drops some good information, some stuff that you guys can Google later on and look into.
Because that's what it all comes down to, really, Nick. All the problems in our whole world are all over this lie that there's this finite amount of energy. And there is a finite amount of oil and coal and natural gas. But the truth is that at this point in human history, with our technology, our prowess, and the things that we haven't even been privy to that are probably 100 years behind what's really available, we don't need fossil fuels. So there is no shortage. There's, in fact, endless free energy that only needs technology to tap into it, and it's been hoarded since Tesla.
What we need is a deep whistleblower, man. That's way deep in the system. I'm talking about someone that's not even at Area 51, at the other Area 51 that nobody knows about.
What we need is a whole country to say we're going to make do without our elites making money off energy any longer. We're going to let the cat out of the bag. Even if it's a little one, even if it's Uruguay or somewhere in South America, like they love to push the pedal to the metal and legalize pot like they just did. If they came out and said, hey, listen, we have Tesla Tech, our top physicists at our top universities know how to make electricity out of nothing, 0 point. We're going to put a bunch of obelisks and pyramids all over the place and make this 0 point energy field, and all your wireless devices and vehicles and everything you could think of is going to run off this invisible power grid forever, and we're going to do it because we love you. Well, guess what? The people would never, ever think twice about supporting that government forever.
And, I mean, I think the big idea that is kind of kept hidden, and I think what Tesla stumbled upon or knew about somehow, because he was, you know, obviously Tesla was a guy that had a genetic anomaly that made his brain very, very adept to understanding electricity and things like that, electromagnetism and all that stuff. Now,
right.
Not only do we have the sun, all right, the sun is obviously the greatest source of energy for the whole planet, because let me just basically break it down like this. Even if you think of all the fossil fuels, where did the fossil fuels come from? Now, most people think that it comes from dinosaurs, but according to my biotech history that I know, most oil is actually from basically rainforests and stuff like that ended up sinking in
right.
and buried under after this big comet hit the Earth or whatever. And it's rainforests and ferns and plants and stuff like that got buried underneath, and then all that carbon, all the bacteria down there ended up turning this stuff into what it is now, which is fossil fuels, hydrocarbons and things like that.
Yep, and that's exactly true, and it's just flora.
So basically, I mean, if it's mostly plants and then a little bit of dinosaur, which dinosaurs ate the plants, basically all this fossil fuel and stuff is technically solar derived energy, you know, and unfortunately we're burning it unfortunately it's bad for the ecosystem, but all the energy that we use is essentially solar. Now, the other source of energy that I guess what Tesla probably figured out and what the government is keeping under wraps, because it would make energy free for everybody, is that the Earth itself is just one gigantic electromagnet.
Yes, it is.
Electromagnetic motor, which basically
with 2 poles.
And it probably creates enough energy for, 10 times the population that we have now to use.
Right. Well,
at least.
You're right, Nick. That's a perfect example, is that they said it would be enough power for even our current consumption to have enough for 4 million years, even if we just completely could tap it out. But the thing is, it's never going to tap out, ever. We'll be off planet in 200 years. It's nothing we need to worry about at all. It's just being hoarded for control, that's all.
Yeah, and so this is the ideas that we need to get out, because like I was saying, I think it was Monday, may have been last Wednesday. But as we see the internet start improving access to information, and we start seeing people in the third world that normally wouldn't have access to this information, start getting these classes for free that people need. We need to start getting more and more classes online. There's already a bunch of classes online for free. I think even Harvard has some classes online for free that you can take. And we saw what happened to Aaron Swartz. Aaron Swartz tried to release all this, he tried to release a bunch of information from one of these universities that keeps all of their information under wraps and hoards it and is greedy about their information. And Aaron Swartz was like, no, that ain't right. You know, this is information that was, researched by students at this school and professors at this school. Why do you have a monopoly on it? We're the ones that did the work. And that's why Aaron Swartz got charged with what he got charged with for stealing information and all that stuff. And that's why he got that's what either drove him to suicide or why he got suicided, was because he understood that information is highly, highly important for a free society. And unfortunately, in the climate, in the type of economy, the type of system that we're in now, almost everything is copyrighted, patented, intellectual property, this, that, and the other thing. If you use it, you get sued. So no one's able to take this information that's out there, which is mostly created by people that are scientists and inventors, and they're monopolized by these corporations and by these colleges, which colleges basically are corporations as well. It's just the wrong way to think about things, and it's the way to enrich the elite. And it's whoever can pay for the patent, whoever can afford the patent, which it may cost millions and millions of dollars. And guess what? A regular guy like Nikola Tesla, he can't afford to license those patents, and that's where Edison got him, because Edison got him on all these patents.
Right, and Edison is, of course, a banking family guy, so he had unlimited amount of funds to pursue his own agenda, which was control of all basically the scientific method and the commercialization of the scientific method. So, yeah, you cannot compete. And what's happening right now in the world is that all of the really cheap, easy to get to, to manipulate energy is basically gone, more or less. They're just fighting over the last pockets of it right now. Does that mean the world and society is going to crumble and collapse like a current NASA study? Which, by the way, if you know anything about NASA, they are a private corporation as well. So you cannot trust them any more than you can trust the Fed. They work for the same bosses. At any rate, NASA's convinced that society will collapse within 20 years because we'll run out of fossil fuels. We'll raise the temperature. There's too many people. We can't make enough food. All moot points and all bullshit, because we know there's free energy everywhere, and that solves all of our problems.
Exactly, and the real issue is that all the resources are being hoarded by people, and they're being bottlenecked, or they're not being distributed. They're just not letting them get out. And It's just like what's happening with all these people that are in poverty. Even in the United States, we got roughly, I think the number was around 30 million or something, people that go hungry. That go hungry every month, and we throw away literally half of our food just because there's stores that throw away their food, and when people try to come and collect it for like donations or to feed the homeless, they're like, oh no, we can't do it, policy or whatever, liability, this, that, and the other thing.
And this is everything in a nutshell wrong with the world's economic system. Farmers are now paid not to grow crops, therefore not to lower the price, therefore to keep prices artificially high, which leads to starvation and famine. And then, to put the cherry on top, Monsanto, which for all intents and purposes is basically untouchable until we all decide to grow our own food, they make GMO crops that need to have massive amounts of fungicide sprayed all over them. And guess what that does to the food? It rots it. If you've ever bought something organic and something conventional, sit them side by side and watch which one rots quicker. I mean, the fungicide and the pesticides on the conventionally grown thing will eat into the cell walls and rot it quicker. Yeah, they get a bigger yield and it takes less time, so they make more money in theory. But what does that do? It leaves a lot of rotting GMO food all over in these huge warehouses everywhere.
It's like back to this fact that food is basically solar energy. Think of the carbon footprint that it takes to ship food from who knows where on these trucks and trains and all this stuff, and then deliver. And then there's a distributor that takes it to the supermarket. Then you got to drive to the supermarket, you buy it, put it in a plastic bag, and then you take it back home, drive home, put it in your fridge that sucks the energy, throw the plastic bag away. I mean, think of the carbon footprint. Think of what you could save just by buying something grown in your community. And if it's not you, if you're not a gardener, and believe me, I'm not personally, I tried gardening a few times. And I have an aquaponics system here, which, fortunately, I've realized that I had to put my brother in charge of because he's a much better gardener than me, and I was killing the stuff off. But now he's got it going really well, and I planted a garden here at my mom's house. You know, not everybody's a gardener. You don't have to be. But all you have to do is realize, okay, well, I'm being complicit in the problem if I keep buying my produce from Walmart or from big corporate places, because I'm creating a huge problem by wasting energy, and these places waste a lot of food. Now, I know from my experience of collecting donations and stuff, the farmers markets will give you the food that they don't sell that they know is going to rot in a day or two, and they'll let you get that food in, and they'll let you go make it and feed the homeless with it. But you're going to have a tough time going to one of these big chain corporations and try to get their food that's going to go out to rot. Believe me, I went to Whole Foods even here in San Diego, and when we were doing our last big drive to feed the homeless, and I went and talked to Whole Foods, and no, they said no, we can't give you the food. And most people think Whole Foods is one of these, yeah, I'll admit it's better than Walmart, and it's better than mainstream grocery stores because they sell mostly organic stuff. But you have to understand it's still under that same corporate hegemony. It's that same corporate structure, that same pyramid scheme that we're starting to realize that is the main source of the majority of the world's problems. So if we can just slowly but surely start rethinking the way that we get the stuff that we need, and hopefully try to source it locally. That way, not only are you reducing your carbon footprint, reducing the resources, but you're helping your local economy, and you're not helping some executive in Walmart or some executive in Wall Street by buying at Best Buy or whatever it is that we're doing. You know, eventually we got to get to the point where we just say enough is enough. No more of this globalist economy. Let's go back to the cottage industry. Let's go back to the localized economy. Let's try out some new currencies. Let's try out a localized currency. Let's have it compete with Bitcoin and maybe a gold standard. Let's have it compete with the dollar. And that way, if the dollar goes down, then we still have our alternative currencies and stuff. So it's time to make our hedges. It's time to say, okay, look, if you are serious and you think that maybe there's something wrong, hedge against it because you're probably right. And if you do it the correct way, like I talked about earlier in the program about real assets and about farming equipment and about how almost anything could be considered currency as long as it's useful.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a wasteful investment. It doesn't have to be, I'm throwing away 10 grand just in case. No, you're putting a couple bucks into this other investment. Maybe it's something as simple as a rototiller or a lawnmower or something like that. But eventually this thing can pay off. And in the meantime, you can use it, you can rent it out, or you can loan it out to people that need it, whatever. You know, and look to your local marketplace. And believe me, I used to make a living off of Craigslist, buying and selling junk on Craigslist. That used to be the way I fed myself for 5 years straight. And it's a pretty good business. I ended up doing this media stuff, and I realized that it wasn't for me, but anyone could do it. You know, right. And what I realize is that there are people all around you that are looking for stuff that you probably have access to. And then there's also people that live around you that have access to stuff that you might need. Okay, so you need a little Bobcat, you need a little tractor. There's a guy that probably lives within 10, 15 miles of you that has one, that you can get it and rent it from him for a lot cheaper than going to a corporation like Budget and saying, hey, I need to rent your truck or rent your thing. I mean, eventually you can start to find ways of going back to the local thing. And my buddy is working with this company called Lyft, and it's pretty cool. It's like a taxi service, right. And he just checks in on his phone. It's like basically an app. Whenever someone around him needs a ride, he gets a little text message, and it's like, you want to pick this person up? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Boom. He goes, picks him up, and he gets paid. I mean, it's like they're cutting the taxis out of the game, and that's exactly the mentality we need to push forward. You know.
And they will until there's bureaucracy involved, and they'll find the shit out of these guys and kill them because they're killing the traditional cab companies, which are cash cows. And it all comes back to having an informed public that pushes back against these people that allow draconian bills. I have to ask you, when Feinstein comes out and says it's not okay to spy on the elites, however okay to spy on normal citizens, how is a recall not started already? How can these people be allowed to persist in the so-called hallowed halls of leadership, not rulership, not government, leadership? She's got a meal ticket already for the rest of her putrid existence, and she should be recalled, man. I mean, people that do things that are blatantly against not only the majority of people's rights, but actually just human rights in general. Okay, it's okay to spy on everyone, but I'm angry that you spied on us, the elites. That's just BS, and that's the only time that this innovation is going to be allowed to take root and force out, because these giant corporations are not going to just take the sitting down. They're going to use their strong arm tactics of making the government push through these draconian laws.
And a lot of people are still blinded by the whole left-right paradigm, unfortunately. A lot of my friends here in San Diego, my progressive friends, partially because of me or maybe not, but they understand that Feinstein is no good, and they understand that she's not a progressive, etc. But when I went to Sacramento on last Saturday, you go to that anti-fracking protest, and let's face it, it was a big time. You know, a lot of the people there were Democrats and progressives and stuff. And on the bus, this lady was talking about recalling Darrell Issa, in which I mean, yeah, Issa's an idiot too. But I was like, I agree with you on recalling Issa, but let's recall Feinstein too. And she was like, oh, what's wrong with Feinstein? I'm like, dude, she's like totally like in favor of the NSA spying on us. And then all of a sudden, the lady's like, yeah, but she was just saying something against it. I was like, yeah, cause it happened to her.
Right.
I was like,
exactly.
She doesn't care if it happens to us. And then the lady was like, oh, I didn't know that. Because like people, you know, even if they're right on some things, yeah, the lady was right on some of the stuff she was talking about, like with Darrell Issa and stuff. But then she totally was blind to the fact that Dianne Feinstein is a total neocon.
Right. Well, they're just, listen, they have a script they have to follow. They play a game to pretend there's division. They play a game in-house between the NSA and the CIA to pretend there's division. But the agenda is the same thing. People have been allowed to get to this so-called perceived freedom because it's boosted productivity, and now they don't need them anymore because machines are better. So people need to understand that if society as a whole, all the little people who don't own big expensive stuff and aren't, dare I say, billionaires, should all group together and realize if they don't start growing their own food, these corporations will shut them out by making it too expensive. And there won't be jobs for most people in even a decade. You know what I mean? Unless free education's bartered now. Unless us as a society decides we get all of our necessities figured out now. Just like in Switzerland, they have 2,500 francs a month as a stipend because the government said, we're so filthy rich, we'll pay everyone 2,500 a month just to keep society from breaking down. We need to negotiate as a society all of these social contracts with our government before robots take over, because if we allow business as usual to persist and it goes the way the elites want it, they're going to create a huge war to knock everyone out, and then whoever's left is going to be a slave, and they'll have robots to do all the other jobs.
Whoever's left is going to continue to be a slave because we're already basically slaves now.
Well, at least we have the illusion of freedom, and we can taste it, and we can smell it, and we can see it. We just can't touch it yet, but we can get there. We have to shake off the bonds of no value at all, which are the banking systems that have no real value when we can barter together and use technology like 3D printing to get around the need for heavy manufacturing and tooling. The thing is, unless we're building a nuclear bomb or a power plant or something huge, people can crowd together and get it done individually and community-wise.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, even with something huge, I think we can, because then with the internet, we can reduce these barriers where, you know, you don't have to fly a scientist in from this, you don't have to say,
right,
oh, I need this scientist from India. No, that guy can stay at home with his little lab that he has at home and contribute to the research from there. Right. And then we just shift all this aggregation of information back over to the internet, and hopefully out of corporate and these corporate college hands. Because if you look back at what what happened with Aaron Swartz, the colleges are also trying to monopolize the information. They're corporatizing the information. They're hoarding it and then selling it to their big time backers, their sponsors. Most colleges are nonprofits or whatever. So they've got they've got corporate backers, and guess where all the patents go to? Guess where all the information goes? Guess who gets a sweet deal when MIT creates a new semiconductor or whatever.
And the thing is, the system is logical and the system works, but it only follows the logic that greed is normal. And greed is unnecessary when we have everything we need for everyone, if only we're allowed to be at our full potential as a race, as the human race. So the argument is no longer a valid point. It's moot. We do not need tribes. We do not need wars. We do not need to pretend we're fighting over scarce resources. We simply need to let all of the information out to everyone. I know it's scary. It's scary to think somebody may have less talent than you and still might be able to go home to a nice place and have food. That's a scary thought, I know. But we're going to have to get over our own internal egos and get over the fact that, maybe because we're better at something than someone, that doesn't mean that other person doesn't deserve all the things we need too.
Exactly, man. And it's like, one of the arguments I made the other day with someone I was arguing with is, just because someone's poor or someone is unable to provide for themselves doesn't mean they should be going hungry or cold. Everyone deserves at least to be fed and not be freezing at night and have water to drink. Catch you guys Friday. Thanks for tuning in.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.